Hi, welcome to Perspective Drawing. We will work on 1-point and 2-point projects for your practice. The drawing here is a desert scene with a 1-point perspective, a little walkway and a fence, and a set of 3 dogs that get smaller and smaller in the distance. What you're going to need are graphite pencils, H&B, and a clear ruler if possible. Clear rulers are really super easy to see through, therefore they're easy to adjust and they make your work go a lot faster. Okay, I've just drawn my horizon line and now I'm going to draw a 1-point vanishing point. From that, I'm going to draw a 1-point cube below the horizon line. So I'm using my ruler to get my straight edges in. I'm drawing dark here with a B pencil so it can be seen on film. But what you should do is do this construction work with an H pencil on your drawing paper. That way, if you make a mistake, no big deal. You can hardly see it. The light is very line. Okay, 1-point vanishing point. Now I will put in a secondary point right there. And I will make a cube sitting under the horizon line, showing the corner out front and both sides moving to the vanishing point. Lines that go to the vanishing point are called congruent lines. So I put in 2 congruent lines there. Another congruent line. This makes 4 congruent lines. I know because this cube is underneath the horizon line, we would be seeing the top of the cube. So I need to put in a 3rd set of congruent lines. And they're going to crisscross at the top like this to show accuracy in the top plane of that cube as well. I'll put a little shading in. I might clean it up a little bit, and I'll show you how you can put in cast shadows that are accurate. And notice I have the ruler to the vanishing point, which is the light source, the sun, and I've created an approximation of where the cast shadow would go according to perspective. So those are my reference lines. I'm going to use my smudging stick to just smudge out a bit of a cast shadow there. I'm leaving my construction lines for now because this is a practice sheet. If you were doing this for reals, I would tell you make sure your cast shadows are a bit fuzzy and blurry on the edges. Okay, I think as soon as I erase these construction lines, this little explanation will be finished. And I'm going to talk about how to draw a fence with a 1-point perspective that looks realistic. I call it the split line schema. So here I am, another horizon line, series of mountains, because I'm going to do this in the desert. On one vanishing point, from off to the left side, I'm putting a small road in, and I want to do a fence with fence posts that get smaller and smaller as they go back to the vanishing point. So I put in the top line of the fence post and the bottom line of the fence post. Measure to find the middle line between the top and the bottom post and draw a light line for your median. That will help you move forward to find the correct positioning. Because here's according to the medium. Look at number 1 is on the bottom, number 2 is in the middle, number 3 is on top. When you run a line diagonally from 1 to 2, wherever it lands on 3 will be your next pole for the fence. And again, the same thing. Adjust your ruler diagonally 1, 2, 3, and then down for the pole. Okay, I'm going to do the rest of them right now. They do get gradually smaller and smaller and tighter. When you try this on your own, whether you're doing a fence or a telephone poles or whatnot, make sure that the first 2 vertical lines you put down are quite some distance apart. Otherwise, if they're too close, you start too close, by the end of it, you will have 50 or 60 little vertical poles. That's way too much work and it's way too hard to organize. So situate your outside poles apart from each other a good distance. Now I've got a perfectly engineered length of fence that is correct. Later I will put in sidewalk cracks to match where the poles are at the very end. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cleaning this fence up and turning those vertical lines into fence posts. And I think I'll put in some barbed wire since we're out in the desert in the countryside. So now I'm going to have to make the poles like a round piece of wood, so I will start doing some ellipses on the bottom and also on the top. When you do this, whether you're doing a tree, series of trees, series of telephone poles, series of light poles, whatever you're doing, remember that as things get smaller, when they go back in space, they will get smaller and thinner, and they will fade a little bit due to atmospheric perspective. So what I'm doing now is I'm making little visual notes where I'm going to start those poles as I go further. This is kind of a time-consuming detail because what I'm going to do is I'm going to thicken the poles and then I'm going to shade them in with a light source. Okay, here are the poles, and there we go. I already shaded them, boom. Now I'm going to draw some barbed wire going through the fence, and I want to have like a little loop of wire to make it look more realistic. Not going to be a perfect fence, but more of a real fence, the kind of fence you would see out in the desert, on a ranch or a farm. So this part's actually kind of fun to do. I'm just looping them along. You know, to make this kind of fence, you can drill holes in the wood and then put the wire through the fence. That's how they do it. Oops, I made a boo-boo on that other one. I'm going to have to go back and fix it. In fact, I see 2 boo-boos. This one, and because I need to make them consistent with the whole fence. So I'll fix that one. And I'll fix that one and that one. Now it looks pretty realistic. You know, because I'm using a B pencil for the video, not easy to erase. Can you see the ghost marks where the old barbed wire was? So this part can go pretty fast. And next I'm going to put some actual barbs on the wire just by drawing little crosses on them. Have you seen this before? I've seen this so many times. Usually it's for if horses or cows or goats or sheep are grazing out in the field. Now I'm throwing down a little bit of tonal shading. Things as they go in the distance are going to be much lighter than what you see in front of your face or next to you. So if I were trying to be realistic, I would make this grassy plain much more vivid at the bottom end of the composition. Now I put a sun in, so there's my light source, and I'm going to put in some basic little shades of the mountain. I'm going to do it pretty loose so I can simply go through with a blending stick and soften them. And I'm putting the shadows on the side of the mountain that the sun doesn't reach logically. Okay, throwing that in. Now, when you do this assignment, when you look at your perspective drawing reader, you'll notice that the desert scene has a fence, has a barn, just like the one I'm going to do here. But the one in the reader also has telephone poles. So you can put in telephone poles or a fence. You don't have to do two of them, but you do need to put a barn or some kind of building in this 1-point perspective. Now see, the clouds I'm putting in are getting smaller and smaller as they get further and further away from me. And when I color the sky, the top of the sky is going to be a lot more vivid than what I see on the horizon. Generally, when you look out at the horizon and things look muted and kind of hazy, that's called atmospheric perspective. If you can utilize it in your drawing, if you're doing a landscape or architecture, it's a nice touch to be able to show that. It gives a little more depth to the drawing. So now I'm working on that. I'm doing this split line schema demo and also this desert demo for you with a video with graphite. What I'm going to be doing for the next two perspective study assignments, I simply drew them on my iPad using Art Studio, and I saved the shot. So what I'll be doing is showing you what I drew digitally, which of course, if you want to try that, go ahead. I would say probably the easiest thing for you to do to learn these techniques is simply to use basic drawing paper and a graphite pencil. Those of you who really want to take it farther, you could start the drawing with pencil and you could end it with ink or charcoal, or put some pastel in there, whatever you like to do. So you'll have 4 perspective studies to do. First one is make a split line schema. Second one, make a desert scene such as this. Third, you're going to do a 2-point perspective city corner with buildings and streets. And then the last one, you will do 3 to 4 birdhouses to a 2-point perspective. So after I wrap up this one, I'll be showing you those next. And all of these should be in your reader. I have a lot of student examples that look pretty good at the end of the video, and also on Facebook that you can check too. So I'm using a Kleenex now to kind of modify some of the shading. I'm not being really perfect because this is a practice exercise. It's not like the final perspective drawing that you'll be turning in a few weeks. But I'm trying to make it pretty accurate. So what I'm doing now is I'm thinking where to put the barn. And I'm starting with my vertical lines. I'm deepening the color, the value. And I'm creating essentially another cube, just like what I did in the other video. The difference is that if this is to look like a barn, I need to have a very unique type of roof, which only barns have. So now I'm going to reach the sides of the barn back in space, going to the vanishing point, and the top roof and the other side, And now I will replicate that funky roof edge there and tie it off with 2 points to the perspective line. I made a really bad mistake here. Can you tell what it is? That barn is only as tall as the fence posts. So I thought, oh, should I draw it over? I'll just draw it bigger. And then I thought, no, it's an honest mistake. I will turn it into a doghouse. So I'm going to be doing that. Heads up to you. Draw some kind of building in your desert scape. I don't care what kind of building it is. It could be a barn. It could be a doghouse. It could be a house, whatever. So what you're going to do when you do this assignment, you're going to show the landscape going to the mountains with sky with clouds. You're going to shade in the sky a bit to make it look progressively atmospheric perspective. You're going to shade the mountains a bit to make them look a bit more real. You'll finish your fence or your telephone poles, whatever you're going to do. You're going to have a walkway or a road. That's a pretty easy part to do too. Now I'm drawing this like a barn, and I'm thinking to myself, what the heck, there's something really off about this, but probably I didn't notice for about 5 minutes into the drawing. So I've got the barn doors in there, and I've got the darkness of the inside of the barn there. And I remember thinking, I'm going to put sheep that are coming in and out of the barn. And I thought, what the sheep are going to be so tiny next to this ginormous fence on the right. So I'm blending it, and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And I thought, I have seen a doghouse that was created to look like a barn, and it was the coolest doghouse. What I'm doing is putting a little shadow in while I've got my blending stick in my hand. Little shadow from the fence poles. And my idea was, well, I'm just going to put a dog in, a big dog, and he will fit that doghouse really well. And then I'll put in 2 more dogs going back in space. So if he were standing up, he'd be about the height of the pole there. If I put one in the back there, it's going to be reduced in height quite a bit. See how I'm doing a little comparison? So let's say you're putting cows in, which is more logical than dogs. You would kind of take a measurement off the poles that you've already done a split line schema with, and you would scale it to the animal. As you can see, if I'm going to put a dog way back there, it's going to be really... So I'm going to finish this one up with some shading and highlight and some details of Mr. Doggy. Your next study is a 2-point city perspective with sidewalks and crosswalks. Here are the sidewalks. This is how you'll start it. I'm drawing this on my iPad. Next, the vertical lines of the buildings of various heights and widths. Then the tops of the buildings, which are congruent lines going to the vanishing point. Now here's how I would start the left-hand sidewalk. Notice that the green goes to the right side vanishing point. To the left side vanishing point, notice that this also would be the same method of doing the tops of your buildings. There I have drawn it in, and now I'm doing the sides of the building, which don't go to the same vanishing point. They go opposite as well. Windows. Red are the congruent lines, green very vertical, there's my windows. Left side, same thing. You can do various different types of windows. You don't have to make them so methodically as I'm doing. Well, this one's getting kind of messy. Next step, a little bit of shading on the sidewalks and the buildings. And draw something in the back. The background could have the Eiffel Tower, the Brooklyn Bridge, more buildings, but something in the back. And now for the front, the sidewalks, and the street marks. And there you go. This one has a nice look to it, very light shading, well balanced. This one has deeper shading, it looks more realistic. Oh, they're both good. Your last assignment will be 4 birdhouses, 2-point perspective. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Here's a student's drawing which turned out really, really nice. Let's get this one started. So you'll see that I have 2 birdhouses on either side hosting 2 points for the vanishing points. And I will start with my blue lines, a bird box that is straddling the horizon line, as you can see. And the blue congruent lines go to each successive vanishing point. So using black, I am solidifying the edges of the birdhouse. Notice how I find the top apex of the birdhouse, cross an X in your box, make a vertical line go straight up from it, and that is the middle for your roof line. Next step, the birdhouse hole and the perch and the roof. Notice that the roof line will also go to the vanishing point. Okay, there it is colored. I use different colors for each plane of the birdhouse. And I've reinserted the hole on the perch. You can see on the top above the horizon line with the blue lines, I've started constructing a second birdhouse. Now, because it is above the horizon line, we will see the bottom of the birdhouse, so we will have to put another plane just underneath, like so. Your assignment is to do one above, one straddling the horizon line, and one below the horizon line. Notice how the congruent lines affect not just the top and the bottom of the birdhouse, but the roof angles and underneath the birdhouse as well. Once again, I erased the construction lines and I painted each plane of the house in a different color. A third birdhouse below the horizon line, we will see more of the roof line. Notice I've got a yellow congruent line hitting the right vanishing point to define the top of the roof. And we are also seeing 2 more congruent lines on the roof in purple going back to the same point. So here I have crossed out my frontal section, created the apex and the bird hole, and all I have left is the perch and the stick. Okay, here's a birdhouse with the paint on it, and now I'm going to clean up my construction lines and put the stick underneath the birdhouse. This is a daunting project, but once you get it, you really understand how to do the 2-point bird boxes. And then use your pencil to create some environment, whether it's grasslands, a tree behind it, some leaves, maybe some birds. I've put a scrambled egg sun in mine, and also some texture over the colors. Well, let me show you some student birdhouses that look really good. This is a beauty, very subtle shading. There's wood grain and tiny leaves at the bottom. It's really spectacular looking, very realistic looking. The next one has mountains, birds, clouds, grass, weeds, really nice, and one bird too. This one has a bird and some spectacular shading all over the composition. Very nice piece. Can't wait to see yours.